Hello, welcome back to KidZone and to the next episode in the adventures of God's people, the Israelites. Do you remember what happened in last week's episode?
Yes, the Israelites escaped from Egypt, all 600,000 men with their wives and children. They had travelled as far as the shores of the Red Sea. But then they saw the Egyptian army chariots in the distance and realised they were trapped. They panicked. They blamed Moses and they shouted at God. But God made a dry path through the sea and everyone crossed over to safety. When the Egyptian army tried to follow, the walls of water crashed down and swept them away.
So we pick up the story now on the far side of the Red Sea as the Israelites continue their journey towards the Promised Land. Surely they will trust God now. Today's story can be found in Exodus chapters 15 and 16.
Moses led the people of Israel away from the Red Sea and out into the desert of Shur. They travelled in this desert for 3 days without finding any water.
Then they reached an oasis. Phew! But the water tasted bitter, too bitter to drink. They called the place Mara, which means bitter. Then the people complained and they turned against Moses. What are we going to drink? They demanded. Everyone was so thirsty.
So Moses cried out to the Lord for help. The Lord showed him a piece of wood and told him to throw it into the water. Moses threw it into the water and the water became good to drink.
After leaving Mara, they travelled on and camped at another oasis called Elim. There they found 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. From Elim, they headed out into the desert of Sin, in the direction of Mount Sinai. It was now 4 weeks since they had left Egypt, and they were running out of food. So they complained about Moses and Aaron, and they blamed God.
If only the Lord had killed us back in Egypt, they moaned. At least we had plenty of meat and bread to eat in Egypt. Now you have brought us here to starve to death in the desert. They didn't ask God for help. They just moaned and blamed him.
But God knew the people would need food on their journey through the desert. And he told Moses how he was going to provide it. There would be a fresh food delivery every day, 6 days a week.
Moses and Aaron called all the people together and said to them, "The Lord has heard your complaining. In the evening you'll have meat to eat, and in the morning you will have all the bread you want. Then you'll know that I am the Lord your God." That evening, large numbers of quail, which are a bit like small pigeons, flew in and landed in the camp. The people caught them and cooked them for their evening meal. Next morning, the ground around the camp was covered with a white flaky stuff which they had never seen before. So they called it manna, which means, "What is it?" They were told to gather 2 litres of manna for each person in the family and to use it to make food for that day. They were not to keep any for the next day, as God would send fresh manna each morning, except on the seventh day, the Sabbath day of rest. On the sixth day, they could collect twice as much and keep it for the following day. Every family had enough to eat.
So the people ate manna every day until they arrived in the land of Canaan, the promised land.
Those people did a lot of complaining, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Whenever there was a problem, they just moaned. And they got angry with Moses and angry with God, even after everything he'd done for them.
What do you think would have been a better way to behave?
Well, I think Moses had the right reaction to the problems. Instead of panicking and getting angry, he asked God for help. He listened to what God said and he followed God's instructions carefully. And the problems were solved.
I agree. God really looked after his people during their journey through the desert to the promised land. If we believe in Jesus and love him, then we are God's people too. Jesus said that God, our Father in heaven, knows what we need even before we ask him. But he wants us to tell him our problems, and he wants us to ask for his help. And we mustn't forget to thank him.
Often, God gives us other people to help us with our problems. If you have a problem which is worrying you, it's good to tell someone you trust. That might be one of your parents or a teacher or another adult, and let them help you.
The memory verse this week is from Philippians chapter 4 and verse 6. It says, "Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done."
And the craft this week is this picture of the quail and the manna. You will need some patterned or coloured paper. I've used old wrapping paper. You'll need the template downloaded from the website, scissors and glue, and a couple of feathers, which I found mine in the garden, and something to represent manna. I've used pasta. And let your picture remind you to ask God for his help this week and to remember to thank him. Have a really good week. Bye.
Bye.